Welcome to the Mom as Well podcast, where we are digging deep into the gifts and the gaps in foster and adoptive parenting. I'm Tara Hutton, and I'm glad you're here.
Mama's Well.
Yes, she is. Well, this is our first episode, the first episode of the Mom as Well podcast, and I'm super excited. Thank you for joining us. This Mom as Well podcast has been brewing inside me for almost 2 decades. I first became a parent in 1997 when my son Brooks was born, and I was a teacher prior to that, and I thought I knew a whole lot about kids. Turns out I don't know a whole lot, or I didn't know a whole lot about parenting and all of the ways that it was going to trip my triggers. So parenting has brought out the best sides of me and the not so good sides. And, there's moments where you feel, and I know if you've been a parent for more than a day, moments that you feel like so proud, you can't believe that your child can do that or just did that or just said that. And then there's moments that you feel so embarrassed. I don't want to throw any of my boys under the bus, but there have been plenty of moments that I have felt so embarrassed I did not want to crawl out of the hole that I was hiding in. There's been moments that I just felt tremendous love and joy, and moments that I have had complete despair and overwhelm. And so I know that we can probably all relate to that. And so parenting is a teacher and has been my greatest teacher. It's shown me things that I don't know that I would have ever uncovered had I not been a parent. And so it's definitely a great gift to me. And this podcast isn't about how I've overcome it and become some super parent at all. This podcast is about continuing the journey and continuing the journey in a community. It's about getting support and receiving support. It's about learning from people who are just a little further up the mountain. And somebody much older and wiser than me once told me early in my parenting journey that I couldn't give what I didn't have. And at first, I don't know that I really knew what they were talking about, but I've come to know what that means. And that is true, that our children need a lot from us. My 23-year-old still needs things from me in a different way than the 5-year-old. But they both need me, and I always want to be there for them. But we can't give what we don't have, and so I've had to learn to fill up so that I can spill out. Let me tell you a little bit about my family. I have my first son, Brooks, was born in 1997, and then a couple years later, we had our middle son, Kason. He is studying at A&M. He's about to graduate, and both Brooks and Kason both have serious girlfriends that we're excited about. Brooks is engaged to be married next year. The other one's probably close behind. And then there's our baby boy, Carter, who's not a baby. They're all taller than me, bigger than me, eat more than me some days. Anyway, they are great kids. Carter is 17. He's a junior in high school and runs cross country, always quick-witted. He's a quick one, and very, very affectionate and kind, especially with me, which I need, excuse me. So I call that my first round of parenting. Still in it, but that first round of parenting had a different focus. When you first start out in parenting, you see things differently than you do years later. And I think early on, I was really focused on perfection, really focused on doing everything right, and their behavior, focused on their behavior instead of maybe what's underneath the behavior. And so that approach, honestly, focusing on perfection, which is an illusion, and then behavior, which is with 3 boys, it's going to be a wild card sometimes. And so that approach really left me frustrated. a lot and overwhelmed. And so, but my dad used to always say, frustration is the mother of invention. And I love that. And it's true. When we have frustration, when we have upset, if we choose, we can dig deep and we can usually come up with some pretty creative solutions and some answers. And that's what I've done. And that's what I do. And so those, that overwhelm has really led me to a greater understanding of myself and who I am and why I was feeling those feelings. It's a great teacher. So I think it's such a great teacher that we thought we might have needed a second round of parenting. And so that brings us to 2015. In 2015, we were about to launch Brooks, our firstborn. He was about to graduate high school and go on to college. And, you just kind of have a little mental checklist. And my husband Kyle and I were going through, like, what have we not instilled in this child? And one of the things that I'm not even sure how it all came to be, but we decided that we needed to take our family out of the country. And we went to Haiti. And we wanted to experience, and we wanted them to experience. We thought it was really all about them. Again, it's all about them. This sense of entitlement that we have here, but truly, what we experienced was way beyond just entitlement. Haiti is a rough place, and I was fearful. The first part of the trip, really fearful, like that they were going to, I guess I thought every mosquito there carried malaria and that we were surely going to get malaria or drink some water and die of cholera. I don't know. I was fearful. And so that kind of kept me closed up for a little while, but you can't stay there too long without starting to feel something. And I did. We all felt something, and we all shifted. That trip actually led my oldest son to spend his next 4 years serving in Haiti. He lived there for about a year, but he was here stateside working with an orphanage over there, and he just poured 4 years of heart and soul into that country, and still loves it, still goes back frequently. And the other boys, we were all moved by this trip and this country and these kids that we experienced. And we didn't really know what to do with that at first, but it wasn't long after the trip that Kyle and I found ourselves in a foster care informational meeting. And we didn't know anything about foster care at the time at all. My husband was adopted when he was a newborn. But foster care and adoption, we didn't know a whole lot about it. And so, but that meeting opened up our eyes, and we thought to ourselves, we can do this. Like, we have space, we have food, we can do this. And a few months after that, we found a 2-week-old baby that was sleeping beside our bed. And so that was really, that began something that took us on a journey. And between for over 4 months, we had some short-term placements through our house. There was 4 other kids that came through, and that was great. And it just took all our focus in on loving and serving and giving to somebody who needed it. And it was great for all of us. But on October 21st, 2015, I would say that's the day that everything changed for our family. And a little girl, she was 10 weeks old, was delivered to our home. Turns out she ends up being our daughter. And to give away the punchline of the story, but she came on October 21st, and about 9 months later, her almost 4-year-old sister came to live with us. And I would say when that happened, they were there for a while. The others had just kind of come and gone, but that's when the foster care thing it got really real for me. It wasn't babysitting for somebody. It was, we were in it. And I really began to see the gaps, And when I say gaps, like foster care exists because there's a gap. There's a broken attachment. There's a loss, an extreme loss, and there's a gap. Trauma, incarceration, addiction, abuse, neglect, all these things. And we're asked as foster parents to stand in the gap. And then there's the gaps of the system that's supposed to help us and help these children. And there's, if you've been in this at any length of time at all, there's gaps there too. And then what I found really quickly is that I had gaps. I had gaps in my knowledge, in my know-how, in my understanding of trauma. I had gaps in my own emotional health and wellness that were affecting how I was able to parent and to love on these two girls. And so, of course, standing in those gaps is overwhelming and confusing. So here I found myself again, overwhelmed and confused, trying to parent and ill-equipped. And I remembered what my wise friend had said, and that is, we can't give what we don't have. Children are like mirrors, and but not the little compact mirror that you just get a quick look at real quick to put your lipstick on. Like I have a mirror that I travel with, and it came to live with me several years back, but I'm in my late 40s, and I cannot put my makeup on without this mirror. And so it's one of those 10 times magnification mirrors, right? That's the kind of mirror that children are. Okay, they see deep down and reflect back to us the things that are deep down. And so that's hard and exposes some tender places. And we can either blame them, why are you making me so crazy? And I've done that and do that. Or we can thank them. Thank you for showing me these areas where I struggle and where I need help and where I need healing. And parenting's hard work. And parenting these kiddos that come with so many gaps is really hard. And we're going to have our triggers tripped. That's how it works. And so all five of my children have taught me things. And it's not easy. It's not pretty, but they are my greatest teachers. And I've come to accept that and to embrace that and to be grateful for that. And it's in these gaps where I found some real gifts. One of the girls' therapists last year, their therapist, sweet lady, and she was always asking me about who my hero was. Like, do I have a woman that I look up to? And so it got me thinking. She had me watch the Harriet Tubman movie that had just come out. And Harriet Tubman was a slave, right? And yet she had this inner strength that would well up in her. And she was able to do hard things, scary things. And I think that's what Miss Beth was the lady's name, was inviting me to do. What she was reminding me is that I can do hard things. I have done hard things. And that I need to learn to draw on that strength inside me. And that strength, it's in those hard things, doing these hard things, that strength has developed. And that is the gift. Those are the gifts. And so that's what Mom as Well is about. I'm here to tell you what Mom as Well is about today. And that's what Mom as Well is about. When I thought of the name, and my son actually was a part of that, my oldest son, he helped me with that name. And when I thought about the word well, I immediately was drawn to it. It has a lot of different meanings. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to look them up in the dictionary, and I want to share them with you. The word well has several meanings. And as a noun, the word well is a source from which something can be drawn as needed. Man, we all have to have a source that we go to, several sources, right? Self-care is so important, like in parenting, in anything. But we got to learn to take care of ourselves both spiritually and emotionally and physically. And I didn't always understand the importance of self-care. The older I get, the more I'm faced with hard things, the more I realize how important it is to fill up so that we can spill out, right? And as speaking of filling up, that's as a verb. It means to rise to the surface and to flow forth, to well up and overflow. As we fill, we can spill. And our kids, they need a lot from us. And so if we are an empty, dry well, we don't have a lot to offer. So I want to encourage you to find those places where you can fill up. And I hope Mom as Well is that for you. The next one, as an adverb, it means with skill and aptitude appropriate to the facts and circumstances. To parent well these children from hard places who've experienced tremendous trauma and broken attachments, it requires us to have some skill and some understanding of trauma, how the brain works, how that affects their behavior, what's really underneath their behavior, because all behavior is need-based. All behavior is coming from a need. And so there is some skill and some aptitude and some understanding that we need to have as foster parents. As an adjective, and this is probably my favorite one, it's so near and dear to my heart, but to be well is to be free and recovered. Free and recovered. And that's healing. And we are asked to bring healing to these kids, but we can't give what we don't have. And so I've seen parenting as this symbiotic relationship where they're inviting me to do the hard things, to heal the places in me that I need to heal. And when I do that, I help them to heal. I can't give what I don't have. So when I dream of Mom as Well, that's what I see. And that's what I hope that you'll find. Each week I'm going to share things that I've learned and that I'm learning. I'm going to invite experts to come alongside me, and so we can ask them questions that sometimes we're just too embarrassed to ask. We don't always know the answers, and the truth is we're not expected to. And so I hope that I can bring people on to the podcast to help bring clarity and instruction and wisdom and understanding and encouragement. I want to encourage you. Each week, as a special gift from me to you, I'm going to have in the show notes below, there'll be a link to download what I'm calling a Wisdom from the Well card. And let me tell you where this card came from. Pretty much all my life, at least all my adult life, when I get just the tiniest morsel of just, something really good, I write it on a note card. And so I have note cards in my car. I have note cards that are so faded you can't even read the words anymore from throughout the years, but I post them. And they're things that I need to remind myself, right? Maybe scripture, maybe from a book, maybe something somebody said. A lot of them have come from movies, actually, that the kids have watched. Disney movies, Kung Fu Panda, I remember a few. So these are things that I want to remind myself. Affirmations, right? So each week, I hope we get something. I hope we get some wisdom from the well. And I'm going to have these on some little cards like this, and I'm going to make sure they're pretty. And you can print them out and post them. And this week's Wisdom from the Well card, you could probably guess, is going to say that we can't give what we don't have. I think that's super important to remind us that we do need to go and fill ourselves so that we can spill out. You know what? Thank you. Thank you for joining me for the birth of the Mom as Well podcast. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what the future unfolds for us. Please like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and I would love to hear comments. That would be encouraging for me. So thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Mama's well.
Yes, she is.